I want to buy a copy of Bone Storm. Here's 99 cents.
Allow me to summarize the proposed transaction. You wish to purchase Bone Storm for 99 cents. Net profit to me, negative $59. Oh, please take my $59. I don't want it. It's yours.
Welcome back to Thick and Critical. This is Wes. It's time for the 5th episode of Slabbed and Raw. I was wrong last week.
5.
I said 3. Last week was 4. This is number 5. We've got big news reverberating throughout the comic collecting community within comic books. The CGC's parent company has been purchased. We've got new ownership. We've got some uncertainty, things that we need to talk about here on the channel. After that, we're going to talk about grading in comic books. Is it subjective? And then finally, we've got some ideas of comic books and comic magazines in the 70s and 80s that are just being ignored, that have some really important first appearances that people should be looking into. And with me to talk about all this are the regular crew here on 4th of July weekend. First up, we need to say happy birthday to Pele. How you doing, buddy? How are things in parts unknown?
I'm falling apart physically, but you know, that happens. Everything breaks down. Mona Lisa's falling apart. What the fuck? You know, I'm not any better than that. So, but mentally, I'm still good. And well, it depends on who you ask. but I can still, you know, I can still go to the bathroom on my own. And I think that's a win. But a lot of shit going down this week, and I'm excited to talk about it. We gotta let people know.
Absolutely. Next up, we've got Dok, the man who's been with the channel since day one. How you doing, Dok?
I am great, sir. I am looking forward to this. These are some really interesting topics, and you can look at them from a lot of different ways. So I really look forward to exploring them with you guys.
Absolutely. And next up, finally, we've got the man from Berkeley, California, the proprietor of Fantastic Comics, with his much more handsome older or younger brother.
He's younger.
His much more handsome younger brother, Uel Carter from Fantastic Comics. How you doing, Uel?
I'm great. He also has height on me. Ugh.
Oh my goodness.
How horrible is that? At least we both lost our hair.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Let's get right into the big headline. I got some details to talk about before we get into this. Blackstone Tactical Opportunities have acquired a majority interest in Certified Collectibles Group. That's the parent company of CGC that does gradings of coins, baseball cards, magazines, comic books, all that noise. The deal is valued at about $500 million for the company. CGC's current management will remain in place, and founder Mark Salzberg and CEO Steven Eichenbaum will retain a significant minority stake, according to the announcement. The new money coming into the company will fund investment in current and planned services, including adding and training new employees, expanding geographic and product reach, acquiring new technologies, and developing its digital presence. Blackstone Tactical Opportunities is an opportunistic investment platform of investment giant Blackstone, which manages nearly $650 billion in assets. There's a lot of big names associated with this company. Jay-Z, first among them. We've also got LeBron James, Andre Iguodala, a lot of kind of sports names as well as that. Do I think that Jay-Z knows anything about this deal or comic books? Not likely, but his name's on the, his name was in the headline.
Yeah.
There are famous athletes that are into comic books, so
Absolutely.
who knows?
Maybe
they
are.
Maybe
Most
they
of
just
them are
kind of
wrestlers.
nudged it. Sorry.
Yeah.
So Pele, when I think about this and I see all the things that are happening, they're going to get some new money in and start, investing into the company, trying to expand things. I don't imagine an investment company like this would purchase something that was hot, like the CGC services that they're doing, without there being some type of price increase coming down the pipeline.
Well, we've already had that. We already got the good price bump, and I don't think that they're going to be able to get away with another one anytime soon. I mean, it was pretty hefty. It was not a small bump. It was noticeable. So I don't think they're going to be able to get away with just a naked price increase, like they did last. There's other ways to skin the cat, though. But what concerns me the most is that a company that knows fuck all about comic books or comic book collecting is now buying a majority stake in the number one comics grading service that kind of like works as the hub for the comic collecting sphere. So that concerns me a lot. And they are not a a fluffy, happy, wonderful company. They've got they got their fingers in a lot of different pies, from tactical defense contracts to overseas. Yeah, overseas they fund mercenary groups overseas to handle disputes. These people are
Those are called private armies.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
The key word I heard when you were reading that, Wes, was opportunistic.
Yeah. It's just an investment firm that has an enormous portfolio that is exceptionally diversified. And this is another big concern, Uel, and obviously Pele just hinted at it, is that CGC goes from being at the forefront of the company that owns it. That is what they do. That is, they have to provide the very best service, to being an afterthought in this enormous portfolio of a company that probably doesn't have a lot of interest in grading comics. They probably want to make as much profit as possible rather than providing the most sterling service as possible.
I mean, we've seen that in comics where the conversation is AT&T's involved with Warner Brothers and DC, and do they care about the comics anymore? We've heard that from Marvel with Disney, and it could be the same thing here. The suggestion I had heard was that CGC was purchasing and building and expanding and hiring all these people to make them look bigger and more attractive so that they could get purchased. So kind of think of how a wrestler does the barbell stuff before they go out, so they looked all ripped, wet me down.
So they were fluffing up a bit.
Fluff them up,
what WWE's doing right now, where they're doing wide-scale firings to remove duplicate effort and kind of streamline the services and make their business as profitable as possible for investors.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just it worked. $500 million. Holy cow. But I worry about how much. I was, again, listening to people talk. If you got stake in a company that got purchased and maybe you work a little less later on, what you built it up to become might not be as important to you now that you've actually made it. That might be a consideration that some people have also.
Some goofballs online were like, Pele, why didn't you just buy them? I'm like, what? you greatly overestimate my ability to influence anything.
And the company the company is valued at $500 million.
Yeah,
that's not how much they paid for it. You have to pay it at a whatever times annual revenues and stuff like that. And
they bought a controlling share, 50.01% or whatever it was of the shares, probably 275 million, for controlling stake plus whatever for incentives and bonuses and stuff like that. So rounded off to 300 probably. Wow. For a full controlling stake in CGC, and I think that was a bargain. For what CGC does and the direction that they're going, especially they've done so well now launching into sports cards and non-sports cards and stuff like that. I think that the potential for that over the next 10 to 15 years, that's going to be looked at as a bargain.
Well, really, Pele, if you look at what's happening on a lot of in the world economies, there's a lot of instability as far as currency. So collectibles are another avenue. A lot of people look at gold and things like that, where you can put your money in there and it's a little bit more predictable. Collectibles are kind of that same thing. It's only going to get older and get more rare.
Well, you also get there's going to be a lot going on in what people call sharding, which is these collectibles. I know what
sharding is.
Not sharding.
You have a baby.
Sharding, which you've got like an Action Comics number 1 5.5. This is $1 million book, but you can sell pieces of that, and each one of those pieces can be an NFT. That's the beauty of it. Is they used to do that where you could buy like a share, where you could buy a share of it, but now the shares can actually be non-fungible tokens, and that's what they did to
Babe Ruth's baseball bat and game-worn jerseys. They cut them up into pieces and put them into baseball cards.
No, not literally cutting up an Action number 1, but the NFT have a whole NFT for that action number 1, and then you sell the pieces of it as pieces of the non-fungible token.
I was going to say, it's that episode of The Simpsons where Bart and Milhouse both split a copy of Radioactive Man number 1, and then they argue all the time about who gets to keep it. That's what sharding is.
It's a digital token. It's not the actual physical comic. I guess that'll be stored somewhere else.
Yeah, it'll be stored in a vault somewhere, under lock and key.
Blackstone will have it somewhere.
Safety deposit box.
And this is Blackstone, by the way, not BlackRock. BlackRock, which they're actually two completely separate companies here. BlackRock is a lot bigger. BlackRock Securities and BlackRock, investment group is 10 times bigger than Blackstone, but they have the same similar philosophies. They're very similar.
You have basketball players on one side and basketball owners on the other.
Yeah, you've got the Clintons and everybody on one side, and
bigger.
It's even bigger. But anyway, Doc, you were saying, I'm sorry I cut you off, man.
Yeah, my concern with this, Wes kind of got into it there with the investment houses getting into this, is now we've seen over the past couple of years investment houses buying up comics as fixed assets to round out their portfolio, and now an investment house is owning the company that generates those fixed assets and decides on a quote-unquote objective quality and grade for said asset. Now you get into, is it going to be, are they going to be a little funny with stuff? I don't know.
Are they going to mind year-long waits being the norm?
Well, not only that, but what I'm saying is, can you trust the grading on the fixed assets if the same company is both owning the grading company and the assets that grading company creates?
Yep. That's the problem.
My concern.
Hasn't that always been the CGC problem to begin with? We'll get into it in a little bit, but
yeah, I mean,
the
CGC,
but they weren't holding the assets themselves.
Yes, I hear you.
That's and CGC.
But their asset was their company, and since everybody was being funneled to go through them, it was inherent that maybe
Now, yes, but they while they had the ability to manipulate markets, they didn't have any financial gain in doing so. Now their owner potentially does. That's where my skepticism kicks in, and my because look, anytime you leave something open to the opportunity for corruption, generally corruption ends up involved.
Do we know that company actually owns a bunch of trading comics? I haven't seen that.
No, I don't know that, but there's been a lot of investment houses that have got into that business in the past couple of years. I don't know whether or not this one has, and if they have, or if they decide now that they own the grading company that they are going to get into that. I don't know. So there's my thing is, I just have questions that I'm a little concerned about. Not majorly. I mean, not like I'm not sitting here screaming like red flag, but I'm saying, hey guys, do we want to? I think we need to ask some questions here to make sure that there's not any opportunity for corruption.
Business.
For the person out there that says, all right, I know CGC does comic books, and I heard they do action figures and maybe video games and stuff like that. What would this big company care about CGC for, other than, do they have plans to make it bigger? I mean, we're talking about a bubble comics blowing. Pardon me?
They're going to want to expand out their services, but the reason that they bought it is because in their mind, it's a good risk that is likely to be worth more money in the future. That's what they're doing.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's just, I don't know. If someone were to come in and want to buy my store, I would hope that they would have some kind of idea to make it bigger.
I'm sure they
take what I
it.
have, but other than, I mean, can we hope to expect a West Coast CGC office?
It says expanding product reach.
Yeah,
geographical and product reach.
See, a lot of the reasons why, companies like CGC sell in the first place is because they do have a desire to expand. Now, the ownership's probably going to take a chunk of that 200 or 300 million that they actually got in, cash or stock and sell it to convert it to cash so that they can then reinvest a lot of that into the business.
Yeah, into Blackstone.
Yeah. They'll be
talking about the former owners.
No, the former owners. They will
Salzburg and Eichenbach,
because they're still running it. They're still running the show, so they might take some of that money, as because that's basically what it is. It's kind of like Shark Tank. A company comes in, they say, okay, fine, I will buy your 25% or 50% or whatever percentage of your company for X number of $1 million. And then the expectation is that you use a lot of that money and reinvest it back into expanding your company, expanding your production. So you probably will see another office or two open up in the not too distant future. You probably might see one in north central area, Chicago, New York, Cleveland area.
Well, CGC was already working on a West Coast office in Anaheim.
Yeah, but I mean,
so they hadn't launched it yet. But.
Yeah, but this probably lets them expedite that process because they were operating on whatever their previous profit margin was. Now they have a massive influx of cash that they can turn around, reinvest into the company. Now they're going to see probably major dividends from that. But the idea, and Blackstone and other companies like that, they come in to buy this because the profits that they're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years is going to essentially pay for the 200 or 300 million that they invested in the first place. So they they end up with 51% of the company for essentially nothing in a couple of years for free.
And they're taking the risk.
Yeah, I know they're taking the risk, assuming it works out.
Yeah, they're funneling the money into it.
Yes,
well,
exactly.
A lot of it. Well, the part of Blackstone that bought it, which is Blackstone is chopped up into various categories. They have different spheres of influence, different departments within Blackstone, and the one that bought them was very interesting. Is Tactical Strategies Division bought them, and so you got to kind of think of Tactical Strategies Division.
That like
means
war games.
Yeah, well, it's companies. It's companies where they plan on effecting. In my opinion, this is the way I read this. This is where these are companies that they're planning on strategically changing a lot of the major aspects of the way that company is run and operated, and or that company going forward is going to have changes within that's going to be brought about changes within Blackstone. So I'm not sure what that means. And the way that they talk about digital properties, they say digital like 5 or 6 times overall in their what information we've gotten about
they
it.
Say NFTs.
Yeah, it's going to be very NFT heavy. And here's the deal: there aren't enough silver and golden age and even bronze age collectibles to go around for everybody who wants them. That's one of the reasons why those markets have just gone insane, is because people are, even the card people are going, you have how many copies of Marvel Spotlight number 5? There's 2,700 of them on the census, or I think it's like 4,000, but that's a tiny number compared to what they're usually dealing with. And for a piece of cultural history, which, is so present right now, over present right now in our society. So you've got very, very small amount of these. Everybody wants a copy of it. The book, the highest graded copy of this book just went over for over a cool $250,000, and they're going to find a way to maximize the availability of these comics to everybody who may want a piece of them.
Man,
so NFTs, it's
really
going to be NFT.
You're really hung up on that Marvel Spotlight 5, aren't you?
Well, it blew everybody's mind. I mean, the sale blew everybody's mind. It was targeted for $115,000.
I know. I'm just busting your balls, dude.
You know, it was targeted $115,000. I broke out of the bid at $125,000. I was like, no more. That's it. I'm not. You know, this is going to a crazy town.
What was that grade again?
9.8 white pager. You know, it's the only one in existence. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a white page 9.8 with perfect centering. It's the best of the best. And, you know, I still think it was insane, but it was a statement. Somebody was wanting to make a statement on that, and they did it. They got more money than sense was a statement, but I still think that it was a ground shattering. It was a world shattering event within that collecting bubble, and we're going to see a lot more of that going forward. And there's just not enough to go around. And Blackstone knows this. They see the opportunity to really maximize NFTs, and you're going to see NFTs of Marvel Spotlight number 5 that are directly connected.
Marvel's getting into the NFT game too. Everybody is.
Yep, everybody is, and that's what Blackstone wants. They want to be on the ground floor for when Marvel does it, because CGC is positioned as the foremost authority on grading and comic authentication. So they want in on this on the ground floor. They have all
the relationships you want with people.
They got them.
Have them. Yeah,
they've got all the relationships, they've got all the connections. Comics are still extremely popular, you know, and not going anywhere. So Marvel's getting into it. That means Disney's drug along with it. That means that all these other small Image Comics is going to be in on this. All these companies are going to be looking for CGC then and say, what do you got for us? How can we maximize these projects? And that's where it's going to.
That's kind of what I was wondering when I was saying, like, how are they going to, like, you know, make this bigger? You know, what's going to be, you know, comics aren't, you know, we've talked about this bubble that's going to happen, you know, or that's happening, and it's going to blow or explode eventually, and people might not care about comics for a while.
Yeah.
And getting into this company now, I was thinking, like, why now? I mean, I see that
but it's bigger than comics. It's comics. It's, you know, video games, action figures, coins.
Exactly, but the NFT thing,
absolutely.
See, not knowing that,
I personally don't give a shag about NFTs because I don't. Yeah, I
didn't care about CGC for a long time either.
Pele,
I want the physical product though.
Doesn't make sense. You'll be caring about NFTs in 2 years when one goes over $250,000.
Can you believe
no, because I like owning the physical product.
Went for? You can have the little hologram that displays your NFT.
No, I like having the comic, but that's where I'm telling people right now: get the comics, because all of this is going to be based on the original comics, and they're going to disappear one day. And all that's going to be remaining of them are the digital fingerprints of them. All the comics are going to all the great comics of the gold, silver, and bronze age. The only time that you're going to see those come up for sale is at Sotheby's, Christie's, Heritage Auctions. They're going to be completely off the grid. You're not going to be able to find Marvel Spotlight number 5 for short of $250,000 for a VG copy of it. Much less an Amazing Fantasy 15 or Fantastic Four number 1, 48, 49, 50. Those are going to be off the grid. You're not going to be able to buy them for anything short of, like, you know, house money and for any grade, because there's just not enough of them. And the only thing that's going to be available are the digital fingerprints of them. So buy them now. Buy them now. And then when they are then when it does come time, you can reap the benefits of having those originals, and people will be knocking on your door, and you'll do the best from it.
And Pele, we also have to think about what we're seeing within the current culture is a lot of these comics, you know, that are a little bit older, they're going to want to get them out of the market for censorship reasons.
Yeah.
Some of these things contain, you know, images, words, and ideas that don't conform with the current culture, and they're going to want to essentially burn them when they can get their hands on them. So that's another. We need to do that. But anyway, for this though, I'm telling people buy these iconic comics, buy them, because there's not enough of them to go around, and they've been cheap. You know, and
went back and forth with everybody in this. With Doc, I've talked with Doc about this. I've talked with everybody that I've met in the comic book industry in the last several years. There's not enough to go around, and although I didn't think that that they were undervalued before, I think that they're hardcore undervalued now, considering the actual quantity of them that are available. What do you think, Doc?
I mean, when you look at the cultural relevance of a lot of the characters and the relative scarcity of their first appearances or the comic renditions of them, they're horribly scarce, and as a result they are relatively undervalued. I mean, if we're looking at it from a cultural aspect, but what it comes down to is the market still is what it is, and people pay what they think it's only valued whatever anybody thinks it is, and until people actually have more, I think you'll see it over time, more people having respect for the original comics and the art form of it down the line, as these characters still keep permeating the cultural zeitgeist on a regular basis in film and television and other adaptations.
All right, well, let's kind of start wrapping this topic up. We got a couple more things to talk about. So here, just to wrap it up, Uel, what are your thoughts on this purchase? Are you bullish on this? Do you think it's a bad deal?
I'm kind of like taking the wait and see approach. We've had long waits with CGC now, really a lot now. It's much longer, and even though they have new staff, it's going to take a while to get those people up to snuff. And what do we say? What do we say? If you send something slow ship now, it's going to probably take 9 months or something like that. Some people are saying a year.
A year. I'm betting in a year, but that was before this. So
exactly.
If they really put the foot on the accelerator and they say, we need to get people out there, it doesn't matter how much it costs, we got to get them trained, we got to get these people, we got to take care of this backlog. Who knows what'll happen in the next 6 months.
So I'm excited in that regard. If they could get strong representation on the West Coast, so that you're not shipping what is it, Florida? So you're not shipping it far away, and hopefully, again, something like this will help CBCS, PGX, and the other companies, and it could be great. But as of right now, I think it's just kind of I think we're gonna have to wait and see.
All right, Doc, what are your final thoughts on this?
I'm a little bit, on the potential for expansion and growth, I am very bullish. My only concern is the potential for market manipulation if it ends up being somebody that's both invested in the outcome and in the company that's creating those assets. That's my concern. But otherwise, as long as that's not an issue, I am very bullish on where this can go in the not too distant future.
Me personally, I'm exceptionally skeptical. Anytime you have a company in here has no interest in what they're actually running, they're likely to try and give you as little service as possible for the most amount of money people are willing to pay. So I do think the services will get worse, and they'll try to take the collecting community for a ride. That's just my take, because I am a skeptical person. I'll let Pele have the last word, since I guess he's the most successful businessman of all of us.
I don't think so. No,
You're
that's
bidding on spotlights at $125K.
Yes.
Well, okay. Anyway, I think Wes is right. That is my main concern right now. Is are they going to end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater, destroying CGC's reputation in the pursuit of advancement of other agendas and
They're
goals?
They're leveraging the reputation, right?
They're leveraging that reputation to in the short to midterm to increase profitability over the next 5 to 10 years. And do they have a vision, of what they want CGC to be in 10 to 20 years? And I'd like to see what that vision is.
I'd slab the world is what they're going to do.
I guess, but I do think that vision is going to include, there's going to be a lot of comics that just aren't going to exist anymore. There's going to be a lot of comics that are pulled off the market that disappear into vaults and collections. herefor to never to be seen by regular people again.
People are going to have timeshares of comics.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're gonna have NFT timeshares of comics, and you'll be able to click on it and look at the comic and all that. Ooh, wow! And I can keep this back and possibly sell it and save it for my
I
kids.
got the page with an ad for a good price.
Yes.
Well, no, not that way. But it's
ad.
you get a digital PDF of the whole comic that's your comic.
Oh, thank goodness.
But it'll be an NFT and it'll be scarce and rare and
You too can own Radioactive Man.
possibly. But
Barton Millhouse.
Yep. But I do worry about that, and I think that's going to be the rates. Buy the comics now. If you, no matter what you get from this, buy the physical comics as a collector. Buy the physical comics now while you can. Buy what you think is going, what you are interested in, and what you can afford. And because I'm telling you, decades to come, you're going to see growth that's going to make what we've seen the last 2 years look like nothing. You can bank on that.
All right. Well, the next topic is comic grading subjective. This is one of the feedback that we get from these videos, the Slabbed and Raw videos. A lot of people get very frustrated that it doesn't feel like there's one firm, like this is how comics are graded. Depending on what service, you might get a different graded comic in some people's minds. Pele, have you found that the different services, are they subjective? Is there one definitive grading, scale that is being used within the comic book industry?
There's one definitive grading scale that should be used within the comic industry.
So it
is
is
it used? No,
Right.
because there is an objective standard, but do people adhere to that objective standard? Overstreet's Guide to Grading Comics. That's the OG. That is the standard by which all things in comic grading should be registered by, because they started it. They've been doing this. They are the experts. They know the most about this. And there's people there that live, breathe, shit comics. They've graded more comics than most people will ever see in a lifetime, and they've graded it all, from action to the latest Miles Morales. They've graded it all, and they know this stuff. That should be the objective standard. Does CGC use that standard? No. They use the CGC standard, which is similar. It's very close, but there are differences there. They have they have allowances that allow certain comics to be graded higher than I think they should be. But that at least they do have a standard. CBCS, on the other hand, does the Overstreet standard. You buy a CBCS graded comic, barring a mistake, which we're human. People make errors. Barring an error in the grading, you're going to get an Overstreet standard graded comic when you buy a CBCS slab book. So I think that in that aspect, CBCS is better than CGC.
Well,
But
you said they're hiring people, right? The wait
they're
times
hiring.
might be going down.
Yep, they're hiring right now, hand over fist. They're bringing people on board and trying to cut the wait times down from 6 months to 180 days, and even less.
How does CGC get the better reputation than CBCS for being a grader?
Well, because CGC just has marketing.
How did
And they've been
DVD
around-
outperform Laserdisc when it was so much?
They were the first out the door.
Well, I hear you
They were the
there.
first out the door. They were the first out the door with the slabbing and the grading.
But even now, like, a person looks at a 9.6 CGC and a 9.6 CBCS, and they raise their eyebrow at the CBCS, automatically.
Well,
It's-
part of that is because when it first started, there was just CGC, and then there was PGX. PGX was initially a competitor until everybody saw what they were producing and got ultra skeptical. But whereas CGC was relatively stable, they were steady. They didn't have any of the I guess there was a lot of controversies with PGX, with them actually getting into the selling of the books that they were grading and owning them and working like a store as well. And there was
they're no longer a neutral third party.
Yes.
They had an investing interest in the product that they were grading.
Exactly. And so when CBCS came out, everyone had that same skepticism because basically PGX ruined it for any other third party.
They poisoned the water.
Yeah, they have. And CBCS has been fighting an uphill battle ever since, even though it was the head grader at CGC that started it.
Yeah.
And it's it's Beckett, right? I mean,
That's
Beckett
their
grading.
backing became.
Well, I mean,
the parent company.
It's got a good name behind them from collectibles, and stuff like that. You'd think that people would jump on a little bit harder.
But at the same time, the Beckett name holds about zero sway in the comic industry.
Right. I hear you.
So,
the baseball thing.
Yeah, it was. And they're like, well, F those card people. They screwed up the comic market once. Back in the 90s. So there's still that like disgust at the card people that's still holding over, plus the fact that PGX poisoned the well, and that's even in spite of the fact that CBCS was created it was started by CGC's head grader at the time. He left the company and started his own company, and even that didn't kind of outweigh the fact that PGX had already poisoned the well. They've been on an uphill battle, and they've been doing well. But I think for the layperson perspective, like the people that don't really super know, they're like, well, CGC's the company, right? And then everyone else is just kind of pretenders.
But to answer the question, though, yes, there is an objective standard. There's an objective standard by which this comic is a 7.0, this comic is a 9.8, this comic is a 2.5. There is an objective standard. You can learn by reading the Overstreet's Guide to Collecting Comic, by Overstreet's Guide to Grading Comics, and I taught my wife how to grade comics, somebody that didn't know anything about it, and within 3 hours she could properly grade practically any comic that I put in front of her. It took her a while. Maybe took her like a half an hour to an hour to grade a comic book because she was going very carefully over it, looking at everything. But she came out with the grade that I came out with. Oh my God. If you go by that book, if you go by their standards, you can learn how to objectively grade a comic. But here's the problem.
Here's the subjective part.
People don't. They're lazy. They don't read the book. They don't keep the book on hand. They don't use it as a reference. They forget, or they allow their inner
personal biases.
Yeah, their own greed, their own personal biases, whatever. Oh, this book really is a 6, but as a 7, it's worth $500 more. So, and it's so close. It's a nice looking 6.0.
And this is a good customer. He's got that big account.
Yeah. So
when I tell my brother, like, this is how I learned it. Never look at the price before you're grading.
Right.
Ever.
Never ever.
Do that. Yeah. Don't think about what you're going to sell it at. Don't think about if it's yours and you're selling it, or if it's theirs and you're buying it. You got to be as objective as possible.
Yeah.
So
it's hard
I have a question. So we talked about you don't want to have a controlling interest in the product that you're putting out, but we do know that there are exclusive contracts with CGC for pre-graded 9.8s.
Yeah.
That makes me nervous. Hey, this really isn't a 9.8 out the chute, but they paid for 10 of them. They've got 8 in this, what they sent us. We got to get, what are the 2 next ones up there so we can fill the order?
Okay, I know how that works. What happens is, like I say, they get a contract for 15 9.8s that are going to be going out, to them. CGC will demand 25 copies of a newly printed comic.
That is from the printer, or is that
publisher?
From the publisher?
Yeah. They'll demand if we got a 20 issue run that has to be put out, 29.8s for this customer to fill. We're demanding 30 copies, so that we could end up with 10s, 9.6s, 9.4, 9.2. But the odds are that you're going to get 20 out of a newly published comic, you're going to get 29.8s out of 30 new books. If
What
you
if they can only
don't,
get 18 though?
then
Oh,
you
you're about
need
to
to
tell me. I'm sorry.
then you need to FedEx me some more copies.
Yeah.
You know, you need to FedEx me some more copies.
When we
you need to get them here.
when we take comic books out of the boxes, you might have like a stack like this, and then
brick,
somewhere in here
yeah.
is the good stuff.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's true.
I'm gonna teach everybody that don't already know this trick. When you go to the comic shop, don't take the one in the front or the one in the back. Grab one from the middle of the stack on the shelf. I'm gonna teach you that. If you don't already know it, you should have learned that a long time ago. Grab
Uel,
the
can
one
I go
about
to you and
4
say-
back.
You got a copy underneath the register?
What? What copy of what under the register?
Whatever comic. Hey, do you have a comic that's not out here that everyone's touching? You got one under the register I can buy?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, for poll customers, we've already done that. For other ones, maybe less so.
That's the advantage of being a pull customer is you get comics that are not as much fucked with.
Or sometimes I'm like, oh, I know this person likes a certain artist or an alternate cover of a certain style, and you take care of them that way.
But
So,
anyway,
yeah.
I was going to ask Uel, what do you think? What's your opinion? Because you heard my opinion now. What this is kind of a debate. So,
Well, it's
what do you
written in Overstreet, and if you go by Overstreet for even a few minutes, you should probably go with their guide, and it's objective then. Of course, if you're a coin collector, my father, he's like, that's not mint. None of this stuff is mint. It's been touched, that type of thing. I think that's where the subjectivity comes in. Some people are forgiving certain things, and maybe it's because they've been influenced because they know what the price is, or it's their personal collection, or whatever the situation is where they're creating it. I could put more money on it. But so there's allowances I feel that people make, and over the course of time, there's allowances. Like, aren't those the grease markers on the comic book covers? That do the date and stuff like that.
Yeah,
That's accepted. That's not mint. It will never be a 9/8, and yet it can be. So date stamps on the comic books. It's just what they did back in the day.
which there are allowances for errors. Yeah, there's allowances for errors that aren't allowed in other eras. But anyway,
Right.
Doc, you're saying?
No, I wasn't saying anything.
When I was in the military, you have to get certified. You have to have a certified, trainer, instructor. They have to come watch you, and they have a little checklist. And they all went through the same training. They all had the same checklist that everyone else had, and some of them were easier than others.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I hope I don't get that asshole. This is going to be a rough day. He's going to be watching my every move. Or hey, that he's cool. He'll let me kind of do my own thing here.
Yeah.
Since the
imagine
very
it's
beginning,
everywhere.
you mentioned date stamps. Since the very beginning, CGC has allowed date stamps because Overstreet always allowed date stamps.
Right.
And that's a stamp. It's a little bitty stamp. It's about a 1/4 inch high. Everybody's seen them. It's about 1 to 1.5 inches wide. It's a neat little stamp, hopefully, that's somewhere on the front or back cover. And I love them. They are like catnip to me. A good, clear date stamp on a comic tells me that that's a newsstand copy, and it survived.
Right.
It survived. And if it's in high grade and it's a date stamp, that's like, ooh, rub the nips. Ooh, that's
Yeah,
nice.
it's true. I know I've had people on my show where the collector wants white pages. This guy is really happy that there's stamps on the comics. I always buy the stamp comics and things like that. But, it is still a stamp.
Yeah. And the grease pencil, but it's actually part of the distribution / production of the comic. Mm-hmm. So it's bunched in with that production / distribution. And there's also, if you notice on a lot of comics from the 70s, 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, that there'll be colored pages on the top. There's, where they had like a roller that they went through with ink on it. And all the top, went over the top of all the comics, and sometimes it ran down the back, or it saturated the pages, or anything like that. And there are allowances for a certain degree of that if it's too heavy, too bad, or anything like that, it will affect the grade. If not, it doesn't. But
Well, that's good
there's
to know.
but
But that's still a subjective. It's still a subjective
Great,
approach
yeah.
because
but it's allowed for. But it's
Well,
allowed.
It is allowed
yeah,
for, yes.
but that's the point. It's allowed for, except for when it's not. And
Except for
that
when
is-
it's too heavy.
Yeah, well, that's an entirely subjective decision.
No.
No, they established a standard, but it was a subjective standard. It was just an arbitrary standard.
No, because it's part of the distribution process.
No, then it doesn't. Then it shouldn't matter. That it either
Yeah, but
doesn't
a lot
matter.
of things come from distribution that are messed
When
up.
they say too
that-
heavy, do they
yeah.
specifically?
There's a
line out,
length.
this
There's
is what too
a
heavy
certain amount of
means?
coverage. Yeah, a certain amount of coverage by the drip or anything like that. A certain amount of coverage, a certain length of the coverage. You know how much of that excess color is allowed on the front or back. How much of it goes into the actual pages. There's a scale measurable for that.
I'm not saying that they don't have a standard. I'm saying it's an arbitrary and subjective standard. They created one for just because. There's no
Well, as long as
reason.
it's applied equally
Well,
to everything.
Yeah,
What
it
it
is.
does is it tells you that this is allowed for this kind of stuff during this time because this was the
Part of the
acceptable
production
practice.
process.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
In which
It was the
case,
applied practice.
exactly. But in that case, then it shouldn't matter what the length is. That's my
Well,
point.
it does because there's a standard.
Yeah, no, but it's an arbitrary standard. That's
It's not
my point.
arbitrary. It's
Yes, it
it's
is.
the definition of not being arbitrary. If Overstreet, who are the ones that set up the standard in the first place, were the ones that set the standard. That's what
Now
we're
we're
talking about.
talking about
That's the
Overstreet.
reason because Overstreet is the standard.
It's still arbitrary.
No, it's
That's
not.
my point.
It's the definition of not being arbitrary.
Yeah, it's not arbitrary if the rules are.
We're going to have
Yeah.
a definition of arbitrary in the description.
But it's not arbitrary if the standard is there and it's measured by which all comics are measured by. It's the definition of not being arbitrary.
I'm not saying it's not a standard. I could create a standard today.
But it
for
wouldn't be a
anything.
standard.
No, I could create a standard today and measure everything exactly as
Who
that
would
standard.
accept it? Who's the body
Whoever
that
that-
accepts
doesn't-
that?
yeah,
doesn't
CGC.
matter.
Who's going to accept it?
It doesn't matter as long as it is accepted. You can make a standard for anything.
How are you going to? No, that's not a standard then because it's not
Yes,
It's not
yes.
universally accepted.
Yes. As soon as you make it universally accepted, it doesn't make it any less arbitrary in its creation. That's my point. That is arbitrary.
No.
Means it doesn't actually matter.
Oh my God! Your mind is. I don't know where you're going
No.
with that, Doc.
My point is it's an
He's being-
arbitrary.
Wes is like trying to understand this too. I don't.
Nonetheless,
get
if
this.
there's a ding in the comic book cover, you should be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
But soiling and
Pele, when you say
staining,
off-center pages,
Yeah.
is there a standard for that? Once you get so off-center, it can no
Yeah.
longer be a 9.8.
Absolutely.
Then there's a
Absolutely.
standard.
Yeah, it's a standard,
In
and
the
all
production
comics are measured by
process,
that.
there are errors. Sometimes the error deviates so far from perfection that it can no longer be graded at a 9.8.
And sometimes the errors are so far off that they become more valuable than the standard, and that happens. I've got a Defenders #1 with a freaking white band on it that's 2.5 inches wide. You know, from the spine. You know, it's insane. You know, it's the widest thing. It's the widest one I've ever seen, and it's considered a fancy error. So that's actually desirable within people that collect defects.
and then
but,
double and triple covers.
But yeah, if you go beyond a 1/4 inch on the spine, like say you go to like if you have a miswrap on the comic and it goes beyond a 1/4 inch, it cannot be a 9.8. You know, if you go beyond a 1/2 inch, it cannot be a 9.6.
But
So-
here's the word I hear a lot. This is a very fine comic, but it presents much higher. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, I've actually sold them like that
polishing a turn.
because it's not. Its appearance is it presents better. Its appearance is higher than the effective grade.
I think that's also part of the subjectivity. Also, when people, this is
It
when
is.
laymen are looking at it. Also, you know.
Yeah, but that's
comic
not
buyers.
that's kind of like it's not a official grade. It's more like this
It's a sales
looks
tactic.
like. Yeah, it is.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Right.
telling. But anyway, I didn't mean to didn't get you upset, Doc. I wasn't trying to upset you.
No, but
we are going to throw it to
point
Doc.
still
What are your
stands.
thoughts on subjectivity?
Yeah.
Is it available so we can kind of move on to this last topic? We're getting up to the hour point.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think for the most part, it is because it's going to depend on. I mean, something as simple as how good is your vision.
Yeah, anytime you add humans into the equation,
it automatically becomes subjective. You have objective standards that could have been created logically or arbitrarily, but you end up with, once you add humans into the mix, you end up with a subjective application of said objective standards. Now, I think that especially with CGC and CBCS, as they advance technologically, you are going to get closer and closer to objective standards. You're starting to see it in sports with instant replay, with whether or not a ball crosses a line or a puck crosses a line. You start seeing a lot of things as they add more technology. And you're going to start seeing it a lot more, especially with the quality of cameras and tools that there are available these days. I will not be surprised if in the next 10 years, comics are essentially only glossed over by human eyes and 95% of the grading is done by a computer.
I could already do that. They've got the camera. They've got the app now that you can take pictures of it and it'll automatically tell you what it is.
Yeah, but even then, you still got to hit it from all different angles and then essentially knit it together into a 3D model and then objectify, and then it measures and places measurements on it. So you're going to start seeing more of that.
I get what you're saying on that. But it's still an issue of human error allows for the entrance of subjectivity. If it wasn't for human error, there wouldn't be subjective grading. There wouldn't be subjective grading issues within comics.
Yeah, but as long as there's there's going to be human error. So that's my point.
That's why I wear glasses that have the little magnifiers on them when I'm grading expensive books.
I'm going to start doing that too, I think.
But CGC's reputation is built on, I think 65 million collectibles graded.
Yeah.
People apparently trust their training process, their grading process, and that's why they're gold standard. If you see them mess up on a bunch of stuff and people realize they've been undergraded or overgraded and people have been sold lemons, you'll see the reputation dwindle over time.
Yeah.
So I think within the grounds of what they're doing, they apparently have done a good enough job to keep people happy.
There's always someone that bitches at CGC grades.
Yeah, there's the Gotham City. There's the guy of Gotham City Comics that he's a channel and he goes over new books and older books that he's bought recently. He hates CGC with a dying passion, and he's got his rights. He wants, he's got his issues. And stuff. I have no animosity towards him at all. He is right to his opinion and everything. I think he blows some things completely out of he blows things out of proportion. He doesn't seem to mind CBCS's grading, and I think that CBCS is actually better at actually grading as well.
Good enough.
So,
all right.
I like that.
So we've got this last topic. This is one you wanted to talk about, Pele. Everybody wants first appearances. Those are the most, unless it's like Action Comics 1, Detective Comics 27, which are in themselves the first appearances. They want the first time major characters are showing up. And you say that there's a key little strategic area in the 70s and 80s where new characters weren't always introduced in floppies or periodic comics. They were actually, introduced in comic magazines or perhaps even early trades, and that people are kind of overlooking that in this key area where you have good first appearances that are pretty much undervalued in comparison to their peers that are in comic books.
Yeah, way undervalued. And I'll give one example, and then each of us can also give an example of what one that we know. It's not that hard. We know these magazines.
All right.
But the first one for me is Marvel graphic novel number 4. What do you people think of it? What the hell? What the hell is that?
I'm already thinking that.
But it says New Mutants on the front of it. It's a black cover. The first print of that. I can still find them online, really nice copies for $100. $100, $120, $130, and maybe not near mint, but nice VF copies, that present well, the nice, VF range. $150 for the first appearance of the New Mutants. All of them practically. The team, as well as several of the actual members of the team, it was their first freaking appearance, and the book's that cheap. What the hell, And it's rare. There weren't nearly as many of those printed as there were the comics. A tenth of them were printed.
It's hard to get in good condition because of
it's a black cover.
Back. Yeah.
It does not hold any dents on it. Show up like
magnifies every error.
Every single one of them, and people did not take care of those things. They read them constantly. Yeah. The covers,
and it would crack immediately.
As soon as you open that cover, you've got that long crease right down the front, right down the side of it. Immediately, it's an 8.5. You open this stupid thing when you weren't real careful about it. And that's a big book, and I think that it's severely undervalued. 9.8s are getting up there. I think. I'm not sure exactly what today's value is, but 9.8s are getting up there. But the 9.4s and 9.6s are still very, very reasonable. And I just, I think that it's been, not everybody has ignored it, but I think that it has been ignored in general. So, what do you think, Uel? Where's your?
Oh, well, I'm going to go to DC then. I think is what I should do, since I know Doc's more of a Marvel guy.
Absolutely.
There's those Batman books, like The Son of the Demon. Isn't that like when him and Talia al Ghul conceive a baby?
Yeah.
I would say something like that. I don't know what the prices are on that, but I don't really see those at all ever. And if you look at it down the line, I guess that's Damien. I mean, at least in my head it is.
Yeah.
And so that's at least, the conception of Damien.
Just real quick right here. I just wanted to touch on this real fast because it's blowing my mind right now. There are less than 1,000 universal copies of Marvel graphic novel number 4 on the CGC census. 999 of them. There are only 324 9.8s. No, 276 9.8s universal. And it's only $875 for the first appearance of New Mutants in a comic that
And that's
rare.
like every one of them, basically. Every one but, Mirage, I think.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. And Magic. Because Yana Rasputin first appeared in... She appeared actually within New Mutants later on. But
so I would say... Marvel graphic novel number 5, we get the first appearance of the Purifiers, William Stryker, and that's really set the tone of what X-Men became after that. When Chris Claremont really laid the groundwork for that, is and everyone sees that as what the X-Men represent, and it's certainly a very important graphic novel, and really laid the groundwork for a lot of really key villains that we've seen not only in movies, but I'm certain that we will see them in the MCU as well.
And number 2, which is a huge first appearance of Dominic Fortune. And it's a huge Punisher story, that laid the groundwork for his Punisher miniseries that came after that, so it's a huge book in its own right as well. And that whole series is just peppered with, buy them all, just go out there. They're so cheap right now. Go out and buy nice copies of each and every one of them and put them back because they are so undervalued right now. It's ridiculous. What do you think, Doc?
What are you going?
I was going with Marvel graphic novel number 17 because it actually has the first appearance of Apocalypse a year before his first appearance in X Factor.
Nice.
And now, granted, it was just in shadows. It was mostly a cameo. And it's about equivalent of his appearance in X Factor 5. But it's the Revenge of the Living Monolith graphic novel, and by David Michelin and Mark Silvestri. So, I'd say
what number Marvel comics?
17.
Wow, I passed on a lot of those after a while. When the you could go backwards and say like the Death of Captain Marvel, still an awesome book.
He wasn't Apocalypse there. he was just En Sabanur.
Oh, I see.
Right.
So it was his first. It was the first appearance of the character. Kind of like X-Men 201.
Right.
Before New Mutants 87.
Right.
Where it's the first appearance of the character, but not the character as we know him. So, yeah.
There you go. There's definitely some areas for exploitation there, Pele, where people haven't quite realized there's a little soft spot that people can go find some really cool first appearances and stories that are going to be very influential to some of these big franchises moving forward.
Oh yeah, you also got Marvel Previews magazine, which is also notorious for having first appearances. Number 7, which is the first appearance of Rocket Raccoon, and the first appearance of Santana.
Somebody was asking me, they're like, I see some retailers are saying that when in some comic books you'll have, in the back where they're previewing something that's coming up, they'll have whatever character is going to be first appearance is going to be the next month, and people are trying to say that's the first appearance is when it's like previewed in the back of another comic issue.
No, it's just
they're just trying to run a game on you.
Yeah, it's just talking about it. It could be, if they actually show something of the character in there, then it could be a cameo appearance, first cameo appearance. That's you've got to have more than just 2 or 3 panels. It's got to be appearance.
Like one he's talking the what ads. It looks like. Yes, it's an ad.
Oh, an ad. Oh, no. That's just talk of the character.
That's what people like Uel and company, I'm told, are doing.
That's fine. That's fine. And that's fine. Fans love that kind of stuff. There's the whole issue with Marvel Previews and Miles Morales, and I've got a couple issues of that. I've got a couple of those previews because I save copies of all the previews. But, and that's fine. That's great. It's not within continuity. It's not within the story. So it doesn't count.
Well,
it's nice.
I just want to say this to the viewers. I'm hearing there are some retailers that are trying to perhaps, I don't want to use the word gouge, but they're trying to take advantage of some of their customers by trying to sell that as the real first appearance.
Carney's Carney, man.
They like money, and I think if I want to be charitable about this, I think that, hey, this came out before the character came out. I know you love this character. This might be something you want to buy. And if the price is reasonable, then that's then perhaps that's a good thing. This person.
But if you go onto eBay and try to promote your book as being that, they're
full of crap. They're full of shit. It's gouging at that point. They're full of shit.
The market and retailers and even other collectors always want to hype the book that they have to be more valuable than the book that they don't have.
They want to differentiate everything. Yeah.
Hulk 180. Hulk 180.
Newsstand versus direct market. They're 2 different books. Now we've got markets for both because it's been accepted.
Yeah, and eventually, if you repeat it long enough, the market starts to accept it to some degree. Now, whether or not there's enough people that buy into that kind of thing to really spike it up super high is questionable. You've seen it with like some of like the Marvel .1s that were accepted, but then you see other ones where like they're not accepted because it's just a sketch page and not an actually colored page, and it's just preview art. And sometimes the ads actually are a big deal, but sometimes they're not. It really depends on the book and the character, and it's what the market eventually accepts. Sometimes it accepts it, sometimes it doesn't.
I didn't mean to take us so far off track. I'm sorry.
No, but it's within the bounds because like Foom number 10. Foom number 10 is, look it up. This had the new X-Men in it like a year before the X-Men launched in Giant Size X-Men number 1. They were talking about the X-Men. They're talking about, this is going to be the new team. And they're freaking on the fucking cover of Foom 10. And they're all inside the book talking about each one of the, that's going to be coming up and a little snippet about them and stuff like that. Oh my God. It's not within continuity. It's not a first appearance, but it is something very special. If you're an X-Men fan, this is something you should probably get because it is a good preview of these characters that you like to collect.
All right. So we do have a question. We got this one off of Twitter. We got the Instagram page up coming right? It's up and running.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we got that account running. If you have
questions, put those up on Instagram, and we'll try to answer those as well. If you have pictures, you want us to talk about them here on the channel, or if you have, hey, I think I got screwed over. Here's an example of something that I'm seeing on the market. We definitely want to see those too. But this came from Nerdy Texan Accountant, and he had a question for the fellas. What is the best way to store comic book boxes?
Go ahead, Uel. Doc.
By throwing away the comic book boxes and replacing them with drawers or filing cabinets.
Yeah.
Not everybody has money or room for filing cabinets.
I get that. You know what? Actually, you could do what I did. I mean, it's not really as feasible these days with the price of lumber, but just build shelves. Don't try to play long box Jenga. That's my biggest suggestion.
I want to second that. I use the cardboard drawer boxes from the company Drawer Boxes.
Right.
It's very expensive, but you don't buy an inexpensive case for whatever you want to put in it, and these things you can stack them, and the amount of times I've moved boxes to get to one at the bottom all my life has probably contributed to my bad back more than any other thing in my life.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean,
and drawer boxes or filing cabinets, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but think about you're not 50 yet, kids.
That's right.
You don't know. You got babies to pick up, Wes. You don't need to do comic book boxes.
You can do like I did years ago. My first kind of round of this was I just used 2x4s and plywood and made a set of shelves that were like about an inch taller than a long box with a lid on it, so that I would still have to pull the long box out, but they were nice, they were sturdy, and I never had to worry about boxes crushing the books below them. I never had to play long box Jenga to try to rather than to move 6 boxes to get to one. I never had to try turning them so that I had to be able to access them from 2 different sides so that I could slide one out in the middle without the whole thing collapsing. I definitely, if you can't do filing cabinets, if you can't do drawers, at least do shelves and make your own shelves, something sturdy, because like the IKEA ones, the ones you'll get at Home Depot, the kind that you can get at that are supposedly strong enough, nothing with fucking plastic, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I can imagine Doc, when he makes his entertainment center out of cinder blocks and 2x4s, gets out the blowtorch and he fortifies it with a little bit of metal. And when he pulls out the old cooler for the table.
Yep. And never stack long boxes more than 3 high, because they're crushing. You go 4 or 5 high on long boxes, you can crush the ones down below it, and you're going to damage your comics. That's just.
So should it be in a temperature-controlled room, though?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want it to be blazing hot. You don't want it to be blazing hot. Cold doesn't seem to really matter. You don't want it to be blazing hot. You don't want high humidity. You want it to be in a cool, dry place. Is where you want to store your comics. One place good is a closet. If you're not going to access them a whole lot, no, but a nice closet, or downstairs in a basement that's dry,
under your
that's
house,
carpeted.
If you have a
dehumidifier. If you have a
dehumidifier,
have a dehumidifier running.
Yeah, I mean that's a dehumidifier in a basement that's carpeted or something, not just sitting on a concrete slab. Maybe put some towels underneath the books just to catch any kind of moisture that might try to get to the box. One thing that I did when I was a really poor college student is I bought these really nice coffee tables, that were cheap at this closeout, supply company, and I just super glued the coffee tables stacked on top of each other too high. And the comic book boxes would just slide underneath them, the first coffee table, and then the second coffee table, which gave the coffee table was about 12 inches high, and I could just slide the next box right into the second, make a second shelf like that, and then on the top just put the boxes up on top, and I could just I could put like 12 comic book boxes right there that would not be weighing down on top of each other. But that was cheap. It was easy. But yeah, just don't crush you just don't want to stack so many on top of each other that you start crushing the boxes below. And long box Jenga sucks ass.
And yeah, if you're using the normal top loaders, it's nothing. There's no cushion in there. And like you said, you put too many boxes on. Also, if you're gonna do that, you got to do the crisscross method.
Yeah.
If you got to put boxes on, it's this way, that way.
Lincoln Logs.
Lincoln Logs, exactly.
Yeah, like
Look
Jenga.
at
All right,
Yeah.
fellas, I
Hey,
think
Jenga.
that'll basically wrap up Slabbed and Raw number 5. I think we had a
Awesome.
good time. A lot of things change in the comic book industry. CGC's parent company has been sold. It's been acquired by an investment firm. And I think we'll have to see what happens. I'm skeptical, but that's just, I am thinking cynical, and that's who I am.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you very much to all the panel, and happy birthday once again to Pele.
Oh, thank you. The market does seem to be softening right now, so I've not talked about this on the show yet. I'm kind of still waiting to see what happens. Raw books right now seem to be softening on eBay and the different other auction sellers. Prices are settling down a little bit. It's not happening with big keys. It's not happening with graded comics that much yet, but it is. By the end of this year, we're going to see even more softening, and it's going to be a time to buy again. It's going to be a time to really buy in before what I was talking about earlier happens to you.
If I have one last comment, for best ways to store your comics, boxes, check Pinterest. There's a surprisingly creative amount of people that have designed comic storage on there. So check it out. There you might find some good ideas there.
Yeah. Good idea. Good plan.
You got anything, Uel? Everybody's got some alibis here this week.
buy comics, man. Whatever they are. That's all I'm about right now.
Buy and take care of them. Yep.
Yeah, take care of them.
Hope everyone had a good 4th of July or Canada Day weekend, and we will see y'all next week again on Slabbed and Raw here on the Thinking Critical Comic Book YouTube and podcast. Thank you all very much.